Hey Curators, welcome back for another episode of the Yarn Curator podcast. My name is Naomi and welcome to my channel where we talk about all things knitting and spinning related. As I said, my name is Naomi and you can find me as the Yarn Curator on Instagram as well as House of Cardigans over on Ravelry. I do have a joint podcast group there with my sister Zoe, who has the Felicity Yarn Studio channel, and our joint podcast group is called the Curated Felicity Podcast Group. So thank you for joining me. If you're a new viewer or a recent subscriber, welcome. I'm happy to have all y'all here. If you're a returning viewer, welcome back. You know the spiel as it goes in the beginning of these episodes. So thank you for coming back. I have quite a bit to show and talk with you guys about today. So I'm going to try and keep this pretty quick at the beginning. If you watched one of my more recent videos, you will see that I have recently done a collaboration with Lexi of Lexi Knits and Kat of the Knit Cat Paddywhack podcast and my sister Zoe of Felicity Yarn Studio called the Great Stitch Switch, in which we all picked a fun pattern to knit for each other. And so as part of that, we were doing a giveaway where if you left a comment down below, we would pick a winner for that hat pattern. So I'm going to pop that name on the screen right here somewhere, wherever it looks good in the editing process. And congratulations to that individual. And yeah, shoot me a message either on Instagram or Ravelry. Another nice bit of feedback I received on that video was that for a lot of you who are regular viewers, it exposed you to two new podcasts that you had not heard before. So I think I'm going to try, if I remember, I've meant to do this in the past, but I think I'm going to try and remember to do a little small knitting / spinning YouTuber shout out. And yeah, I've been meaning to do it, and then it just, by the time I finish filming, I forget to put that in. So I have two podcasts that I want to share with you guys. The first is Nikki of the Knitting with Cat Hair podcast. Nikki is a knitter who lives in Canada. She makes a lot of really gorgeous garments. She recently did an episode with her mom, and her mom does a lot of spectacular socks, and they were really fun to sit and listen to their conversations together. So go check out Nikki if you're looking for something new. The second channel I wanted to tell you guys about is Alexandra of the November Woods Crafting podcast. Alexandra is based out of, I believe, the Chicago area, and she just has a really soothing, calm presence. She does a lot of experiments with natural dyeing and knits with a lot of great rustic, yummy yarns. And yeah, she's really enjoyable to watch if you want kind of more low-key, relaxing vibe. So go check them out. Like I said, I watch a lot of other podcasts, although not recently. I've just been really into audiobooks lately, and so I've been spending a lot of time in that and not watching as many podcasts. Sorry to all my friends out there. But yeah, I normally watch a lot of different channels. I like supporting small podcasters because doing this can be an emotional roller coaster with a lot of highs and downs and existential crises of wondering why you're putting yourself out there on the internet. So if I can show a little bit of extra love, I am happy to do that. So go check them out. Like I said, I'm hoping to make this more of a regular shout out here on the channel. The last thing I want to say before we jump into the making is Zoe and I are currently hosting a knit along. It is a Steek Along that is going to run through the end of 2020, and we are hosting that on Instagram using the hashtag SteekAlong2020. Tag that post on Instagram, or we do have a chatter / finished objects thread over on Ravelry, so go participate over there. There's some links to pattern suggestions. We did a video with pattern suggestions, and yeah, it's pretty low. Not a lot of rules other than it just has to be a steeked project. It can be a baby project, baby sized, mittens, socks, sweater, shawl. It's yours to decide. Yeah, next we will move into finished objects, and you guys might have also seen in a recent video that I have finished my Jupiter crop, which is a pattern by Caitlin Hunter. So here it is. I apologize for not wearing it, but it is still mostly summer here in Florida. We are getting a few breaks in the weather, but I don't feel like wearing this for 45 minutes, even with the questionable AC turned down. We do not have central air conditioning in my house. We do have split units throughout the house, and so I try not to run them too hard while I'm filming, otherwise you guys will hear a lovely shh sound in the background. Anyways, this is my hand spun Jupiter crop. I knit this all out of fiber from John Arbon. It's his Yarnadellic base, and it is 100% Corriedale wool. And I forgot to talk about this in my vlog about spinning and making this garment, but about halfway through I lost some of my mojo to even spin the fiber, and I think that's because I have to say, Zoe doesn't think I'm a new spinner, but I consider myself a beginner spinner. Full disclosure, I've been spinning for probably probably about 5 years now. And you're like, yeah, that's a ton of time, but I don't know that much about sheep breeds, their properties, how they handle. I think I've yet to do a proper woolen spin, and that's going to be one of my resolutions moving into 2021, is to spend some time establishing that foundational knowledge as a spinner. I think I have the mechanics down pretty well, and I understand my wheel well. However, I don't feel like I'm that knowledgeable. And so this project was great for motivating me to become more knowledgeable about the tools that I'm working with and growing in that craft. And so one of the things that caused me to lose a little bit of steam throughout this project, and I meant to talk about it in the video, is that I had a moment of panic over Corriedale and its fiber properties, because for a hot minute I wondered if this was going to be too itchy to wear, if the wool was going to be too close to or coarse to wear next to the skin. And so I went online and I started reading about the history of the breed, which is pretty interesting. It's a breed that was cultivated in Australia, and it was meant to withstand some of the unique climate conditions out there. And the guy who did the husbandry that resulted in this breed, all of his neighbors thought he was crazy and that it wouldn't work. It's a cross between I'll put it on the screen because I can't remember it now, and it's like 3 months ago when I was reading about this. But basically his neighbors thought he was crazy and that this flock would never survive, and they turned out to be perfect. That's probably too strong of a word, but they turned out to be well suited to that climate, and thus the breed Corriedale was born. And so one of the things about this breed is it can be on the finer scale and it can be on the coarser scale in terms of micron count, and that micron count determines how soft or scratchy a wool can be. And so I had a moment of panic worrying about how scratchy this garment would be at the end of the day. So I went back on John Arbon's website, and I believe the micron count for this is 28 or 29 microns per whatever they measure it by. So what I did after that was I looked up the micron count for a different wool that I've knit with in the past that I made my stalactite sweater out of, and that's knit out of 100% Hebridean wool, and that particular wool ranges in the 30 to 35 micron range, and I don't have a problem wearing that sweater next to my skin. It's definitely toothy and has a little bit of a bite, but it doesn't bother me. And so I knew after that I should have no issues wearing this garment with that you know, scratchy factor. And so with that, I plowed on and ahead. And I don't want to say too much about kind of the knitting or the making process with this, because I do have a whole dedicated video to it. But I do have to say I really enjoyed this pattern. It was such a potato chip knit. It was really fun. Every row's a little bit different. The only part that was a little bit of a slog to get through is the couple of rows where you knit with 3 colors at the same time. And the only reason I say that was a slog is because I normally knit with 1 color in each hand. But that one I was like retraining my fingers how to hold the yarn. And I have to say, I'm still not quite sure like if 2 yarns in this hand or 2 yarns in this hand is better. What I typically do is whatever color I want to be the dominant color, I hold in my left hand and I knit continental style, and I want the more subdued color I hold in my right hand. And that is how I knit 2-color work. So yeah, this was really fun to knit and I really enjoyed it. So the dark blue color is Indigo Dust. The more mauvey color is called, just look at my notes, or this is Waltz. This is the beautiful ones. This is Woman in Blue. And then this one is Hey Moon, I believe. And I could have written down the wrong color. But yeah, I'm really pleased with it. My spin turned out to be closer to a plump, heavy DK weight. The pattern is written for a sport weight, so I went up a needle size than the pattern called for, and I went down a pattern size to account for that difference in gauge. It gives me about 0 inches of positive ease, which I did want a nice tighter, more cinched to the body look for this, and I am super, super excited. I am ready for December, January, February, when we get our nice crisp days here in Florida. It never gets truly cold. And I do have to say, I know I knit my Poet sweater to be my Rhinebeck sweater, but this would have been also been going to Rhinebeck with me, which is sadly happening this weekend, I believe. Womp, womp, womp. Oh well, it's okay. So yeah, I'm really pleased with it. I divided my sleeves early on this sweater. So the way the pattern's written is you work the sleeve decrease or the sleeve increases to about here. And Caitlin Hunter has a tendency to write kind of like baggy armpits into her pattern. So I've just learned to start dividing them a little bit earlier. So I went ahead and did that. But since I was in the middle of a color work repeat, where the pattern divides is actually closer to here. So like I said, you know, it's a little bit of a saggy pit going on, because that's where you guys can't see this. So this is where the armpit divide would have been happening, which is kind of just at my underbust. And so I wanted it to fit closer to my true armpit. I kind of finagled the cast on for the underarm stitches, which resulted in some weirdness. And so what I ended up doing was unpicking those stitches, and I knit a couple, I guess you call that a gusset, underneath the armpit. I kind of made it up. I had no clue what I was doing. It seems to have worked and resulted in a little bit of extra fabric right there, and has tightened up the weird cast on that I did, because I was trying to keep the colors in pattern on that cast on. So it alternated between the dark blue and the mauve, and then it was really wonky when it came time to pick up those stitches. So yeah, that was my little hack for that. But otherwise, I am super pleased, and I couldn't be more excited to wear this soon. I do have to say the pattern is really well written. This yarn is really nice. I gave it a nice soak, and because I was worried about that itch factor, I gave a nice healthy squirt of some of my favorite conditioner in there just to help soften things up. And yeah, I don't think I have much more I want to say about this other than it was such a lovely knit. It was such a confidence booster and the kick that I needed to try and learn more about different breeds, their properties, how to best spin them, and all of that good stuff. So let's move in to whips, and I have quite a few. I don't know if I'm going to show them all. We'll see. I went from casting off that sweater down to 2 whips, which were my 2 shawls, and I decided to cast on all the things. So up next is a new cast on, and the yarn should not be a surprise to you guys if you watched my haul video, my corn skeins. So I have cast on the Stonecrop by Andrea Mowry, and she does have a cardigan version that's steeked if you're interested in participating in the knit along for that. So this is what I have done so far. And this purple yarn is from Manos del Uraguay in the Eggplant colorway, and the contrasting color is my own Handspun yarn. It is a blend of 80% targi, 10% silk, and 10% bamboo. And Zoe picked this up at SAF for me a couple years ago and then dyed it, and I spun it last summer, I believe. And if you did watch that corn skein video, you will know that I originally bought this purple yarn to make a completely different sweater. But when I happened to have those skeins sitting out after filming, and this skein of handspun yarn used to kind of kick around up here in the background, and I set them next to each other, and it just kind of clicked that they looked perfect together. And so yeah, I'll hold them up. So this is the contrast color that I'm using, that handspun yarn. It's this really gorgeous blend of light icy blues and icy purples, lavender, borderline lilac in color. And I don't think I spun this with any rhyme or reason. I just stripped down the braids really thin and spun a nice fingering weight. I believe this is about 800 yards in total, and I pushed my cheap ball winder to the limits, getting this giant cake off of it. And then yeah, this really pretty dark purple aubergine color. I think they look absolutely stunning together. I had originally bought this yarn to make the garden gate, and as I've been looking at them together, I'm thinking that would have been an awesome use for this combination as well. But the Stonecrop is a pattern I've been eyeing for a while. I usually tend to shy away from Andrea Mowry patterns because I've knit 2 of hers and I don't find her pattern writing to be the clearest, and so I usually get really frustrated working on her knits. I know that's an unpopular opinion and a lot of people knit her patterns with no problems. However, the 2 I've knit in the past, I've kind of had to scratch my head and figure out, and they've had a few errors in them, and so I got really frustrated with her and swore off her patterns for a while, but this one kept calling to me, and so I cast it on. And I want to spread that out so you guys can really get a good view of that. And I have to say, this pattern has been really fun to knit on as well. Every section is a little bit different, and the only part that I am not enjoying is working these bobbles. They are a right pain in the butt to work, and that is because they are done with a crochet hook. And since I knit with my right hand primarily, I keep having to transfer the yarn to my left hand to work the crochet bobble. And I've been trying to force myself to do continental when I work those rows just for speed, but I don't know, they're slow going. They take me like an hour to do a bobble row, but luckily there's only 2 of those rows within the full 64 row charted repeat, so there can't be too many of those in the pattern, right? Otherwise the color work's really fun, everything else in the pattern's really fun, and yeah, I'm really excited about this knit. It's been a nice, like, get my garment mojo going again, because that kind of tanked for a little bit. The next whip I've been working on is my pattern for Zoe and I's Steek Along cowl that we are running, and this is the Woodlark Shawl by Larke, who has the Fiber Tales podcast, and she released this pattern earlier this year, last year, I don't know, time doesn't exist anymore, right? So the last time I showed this off on the podcast, I haven't made much progress on this, but it's again, those bobbles, they take forever. So the last time I showed this off on the channel, I was wherever this Evil Eye beaded stitch marker is, and I have worked one more section of the pattern. So these bobbles here, and this shawl is getting to the point where the rows are absolutely ginormous and are taking quite a bit of time. I'm trying to get this in a way that won't lose my stitches, but yet I still can show you everything. So I think I'm going to show you one side of it. So the yarn I'm using for this is primarily Bichizi Bouche in the ecru or off-white colorway, and the light blue is aquamarine, and then the dark blue is knit out of Holst, and they're super soft in the Mariner's Tail colorway. So yeah, I'm still really enjoying this knit, and I have to tell you, for all of the charts, I've kind of fudged it because I don't like the way she wrote her charts for this pattern. The way it's written is she gives the chart for the right side of the shawl, and then she just tells you to mirror the pattern. And you know, it makes sense in theory, but I also don't think it would have been that hard to just give a mirrored chart with the directions. The other thing with the pattern is each of these colorwork sections actually include 2 charts, and the second chart for the section shows you the increases, the color work as it's worked for the increase at the start of the row. And once again, that's something where I don't know why it's not just in the chart for that section, because you could just as easily put that in and then have a bounding box over the repeat. And so minor critiques, it just slows down the pattern, the knitting process a little bit as I'm looking and deciphering and going, oh, that's what that's supposed to be. And yeah, in the middle, I'm just kind of fudging it for what's going on with the color work in this center section. And with just giving the instruction to mirror, this center area where the color work is happening is where I just lost stitches, is where I really have to sit and kind of scratch my head and think when I am working those repeats. What was I even saying? So with this center section is where I really struggle with that mirror pattern, or the instruction to mirror the pattern, because I have to think in reverse, and then I have to think about what happened right here, which is not always the same. And sometimes she will write out what colors should be happening here, and other times she doesn't, so you just kind of have to figure out what should be going on. And yeah, I realize English is her second language, so I try not to judge too harshly. It's just a note if anyone else is knitting it. I say these things to be helpful, not to criticize her pattern. I think it's gorgeous. I think it's lovely. I'm loving the way mine is knitting up. I can't wait to knit the next section, which I believe is a repeat of this colorwork section right here. I think the pattern's gorgeous and lovely, and I've been waffling between gifting it and keeping it for myself. I usually tend to be a selfish knitter. However, I am hitting maximum capacity for like garments and shawls and things. And once again, I live in Florida, so this is not the most practical item to have in my wardrobe, but at the same time, I really love the pattern and I want it for me. But I do have a few friends in mind that I might send this off to as well, who will get much more use out of it and are extremely knit worthy. So I have also been working on my dotted rays, which is a pattern by Stephen West. And all I have to do on this pattern is actually work the I-cord bind off. I stopped myself from finishing this project altogether because I wanted to be able to show it off as a whip one more time on the podcast. Which is lame. Does that make me lame? So if you watched my last sit down show and tell episode, you will know I am knitting this almost entirely out of leftover skeins from my stash, and I have been doing good job stash busting for this knit, and it goes from a light cream into a fade of peach, and yeah, it kind of goes into this like neon-y orange and pinks down into the peach. And the reason I say this is a knit almost entirely out of stash is because after I filmed last time, I quickly realized I was going to run out of all of the peach yarn in my partial skeins, and so I took to Ravelry and the destash pages and I bought a skein of Woolen Boon in the Peach Perfect colorway. So there's her label. Unfortunately, this dyer is, I believe she decided to stop dyeing. Sonia of Woolen Boon. But I bought this actually from, why can't I remember her name? It's escaping me right now. Sandra of the Whiskey and Wool podcast. She sent me a little patch, which I'm going to put on my book bag that has all of my pins. And yeah, I went ahead and bought this skein. It's an MCN blend, so an 80-10-10 merino cashmere nylon. And I love it. I think it's fading in perfectly. And I like that the pattern goes from kind of a more neon peach into this more subdued kind of soft pastel peach. And yeah, I just need to bind it off and it'll be done. So the way I worked my fade in this pattern is in the beginning, I just kind of randomly alternated skeins to create that fade, and I pretty much alternated skeins throughout the entire shawl. And because of that, I held the yarns double as I worked the I-cord border. So it's a little bit thicker than the pattern calls for because it is held double there, but it was just easier to carry the yarns up as I went. So as I said, I just kind of randomly alternated those skeins in the beginning, but about the time I hit this section of the shawl, which was wedge like 3 or 4, I just started working the yarns every other row. And I found that the striping, it didn't look like striping in the pattern like I was worried it would when I was doing it kind of randomly, because since it's worked with short rows, it's staggering the stripes as you work them, and I think it blended the colors of the yarn really well. The other thing I did is I really carried the yarns for long sections to really carry the speckles and colors throughout. So it's a nice slow fade that creates those color transitions. But since I did work the yarns held double for the I-cord border, I do think I'm going to hold probably one of these creamier speckles up here with this double to work the border to bring those in as well for the bind off. I think I'm going to hold the one that has this neon orange in it, which is Leslie from Junk Yarn. But yeah, I'm really pleased with this and excited to have a future finished object for a future episode on the podcast. So that is it for finished objects, works in progress, all of that good stuff. I do have a hank of yarn on my wheel right now, but it is attached to it and I haven't touched it in like 2 weeks. I originally thought I was going to spin my hat for the little knit along I did with the Great Stitch Switch but then I jumped ship and did not do that. So I need to finish that spin. It was just kind of a palette cleanser. It's a thick and thin single ply, and it's just letting the fiber do what it wants to do. So hopefully I will have that to show to you the next time I film. I do have another work in progress that I'm working on, but it is a test knit, and I don't think I can show it off just yet. So I will probably show that in my next podcast episode, because it'll probably be finished by then, and hopefully the pattern will be published. Other than that, for life updates, like I said, I've really been just listening to a lot of books. I haven't been watching much TV, and when we have had TV on, I've actually had a headphone in with my audiobook in the background, because my husband watches a lot of sports, and while I enjoy sports, I don't need, you know what I mean. I don't mind having a book in. It's not like we're watching a drama or something. So I've actually went through the Discovery of Witches series by Deborah Harkness. I drug Zoe along to listen to those with me. She did not enjoy them as much as I did. So let me know down below what you thought of that series. And in exciting news, I should be traveling up to see Zoe here soon, and our parents. And yeah, that's actually, so my phone ran out of storage per usual with when I film, but I was just saying I am going to travel up to North Carolina, and I am really looking forward to that trip and spending some time with family and taking off somewhere different, as well as experiencing some slightly different weather. But with that, you guys, I am going to sign off. I think when your phone stops recording, it is a sign to stop talking. Until next time, I hope you guys enjoy your making, your knitting, your crafting, whatever brings you joy and a little bit of better mental health during these turbulent times. And I will talk to you later. Bye.